Amud Aleph in the Faith, Mishna Berurah, and some honorable mentions about the end of Seif Bet, which is Tefillin, or any other Sfarim, even the diffus that we have nowadays with all the discussions of what is considered Tiva and whether or not the printing that we have is considered writing or not. At the end of the day, we mentioned with all of the built-in leniencies, certainly a person should be machmir to treat them as kitvei kodesh, as items that carry kedusha, and therefore we should have them covered in the bathroom. Kli b'toch kli should be vessel inside the vessel, and also in a husband and wife room, and so on. And what is considered kli b'toch kli? We mentioned that if you have a kliya miyuchad, if you have a cover that is miyuchad for that item, even if you have 100 of them, we call them kliyan. Kliyan means it's their kli, it's made for them, and anything that's designed for them, even if you have several different layers of them, they're all considered only but what one kisui, one cover, and yet you still would need another cover on top of it. So this is the two kisuim, and if you have, let's say, two, doesn't have to be in a clear, it has to be covered with two covers. So it could be even material. You could take your talit out of the talit bag and tefillin bag and just spread it on top, and that would be considered a kisui as well. In peras talit or she'ar kisui al kis shel tefillin, that's sufficient. Even though that the cover is not covering it from all six sides, is only from top and the sides, but not from the bottom, that already is considered still a cover, and that's sufficient. And if you have a talit bag, a larger talit bag like this, and you see you have a cover and another cover over here, so regardless of where in this talit bag that I'm holding, you put the tefillin, even if you put the tefillin bag literally mamash inside of this, so now it's covered with three different covers. It has the talit, the tefillin bag, it has the material of the talit bag, and it has the plastic cover, the plastic protection on top of all of them. How many covers is that considered? Says the Mishna Berurah, that's all considered one, because that's kilyan, that is miyuchad for putting tefillin inside. Now it's noteworthy to say that the Ben Ish Chai also paskins like Mishna Berurah, but the Kaf HaChaim, the student of Ben Ish Chai, Rabbi Yaakov Chaim Sofer, who learned in Baghdad by Ben Ish Chai, and then he left his family for going and living in Eretz Yisrael, and he spent the rest of his life in Yeshivat Bet El, Yeshiva Mekubalim, a tremendous Chassid and Tzaddik. He writes in Kaf HaChaim over here that you could be lenient, push comes to shove. He brings those who disagree and say, no, this is not kilyan, because this is a talit bag. Even though that you make it now miyuchat for both of them, still it's considered two covers. So therefore he says, be machmir. L'chatchilai paskins like the Mishna Berurah, like the Ben Ish Chai, but then he says, push comes to shove, if you have nothing else to cover it with, you could be mekel to consider that as a cover as well. And continues Mishna Berurah, הרי גם כיס הגדול נקרא קליין המיוחד להן וצריך עוד כיסוי על גבן. You need one more cover on top of it, as we mentioned, but nevertheless, אם לא שמכסה בטלית על תפילין בתוך הכיס, as talit bag, you put the tefillin underneath your actual talit. So your talit inside the bag is covering on top of your tefillin bag. Then the talit is not considered kilyan, is not considered a kisuya miyuchad. You have the talit bag, you're good to go with those two covers. Now says the Mishna Berurah, another scenario as well. If let's say the tefillin bag is sewed up on top of the talit bag. In other words, if imagine we don't have this nowadays, we don't do those types of things. But if this tefillin bag would be literally sewed up with its back cover on top of the talit, and this is how you use it. It's a bag, one part of it is tefillin bag, one part of it is talit bag, and it's sewed up, it's literally attached. Then says the Mishna Berurah, if I flip this, then it's considered that the tefillin is covered twice. Even forget about the talit being inside, because now that you sewed up the talit bag, the tefillin bag on top of the talit bag is no longer considered miyuchad for tefillin. It's not kilyan. They're two separate things sewed up together. So when you turn this around of your tefillin bag, and that would be sufficient as well, says the Mishna Berurah. It's interesting to note that if you have a room that husband and wife are going to be there, so the mezuzah, that the doorpost, if the doorpost, that means the door is outside the doorpost, so the mezuzah would be behind the door, inside the room, so to speak. Then the mezuzah, says the Magen Avraham, also needs to be covered a double cover. That means that you have to have two covers, and one of them cannot be miyuchad for mezuzah. One of them cannot be special for mezuzah. So nowadays we also mentioned that you cannot necessarily have both of them be see-through. So the prime example of it would be the saran wraps that we have nowadays for the mezuzah, the name of Shin Dalet and Yud on top of it, and it's covered for safety. And also for this with a cover, and that is see-through. So that's considered maybe one cover, not more. And now you have these plastic see-through covers that are hard plastic. Now this has two covers, the mezuzah inside of it. It has the saran wrap. It has the cover outside. How many covers is that considered? One. And also on top of that, there's another problem. The problem is that they're both see-through. So you cannot have erva exposed to this mezuzah. Because you see that the mezuzah still, you see the name of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on it as well, so that becomes a problem. So therefore, many people, to get around the erva part of it, to pass erva in front of it, they make sure that at home, when they have little babies, they don't get a clear plastic cover, hard plastic, they get a white one or a different color, that you can't see the mezuzah inside. Even though that halachically would be good to see the Shin Dalet and Yud on top, it is good to see it. But nevertheless, if you have an overriding priority, then of course that's something to be mindful of. Plus, on top of it, many people, for their bedroom, if the door is inside, the way we said, they cover this saran wrap with another cover of paper inside of this. Again, you're not going to be using a see-through anyways, because you shouldn't be able to see this. So the ugliness of it doesn't really matter. They just line the inside of this cover with a white paper or anything else cover, and then they put the mezuzah in and put it on the door. This way, you have a cover that's not miyuchad for it, and it's covered. The Orchot Rabbeinu brings that the Stifler Gaon actually had the door of his bedroom, had the mezuzah, and he had a nail on top of it on the doorpost with a cloth. He nailed a cloth to the doorpost. The cloth was hanging over this. This way, for sure, that's not miyuchad, it's a cover, and that's what it is. He said, when he became older, these are things that you're sometimes surprised why people write these types of things about the Gedolim in their Sfarim. Well, you get sometimes a good surprise or a good laugh out of it, but nevertheless, just when the Steifler became much older, and at some point he took it off. At some point, because he was not considered anymore a cheder of ish ve'isha, a room of husband and wife. Therefore, it was no need to have the thing. Therefore, he probably opted for seeing the name of Shin Dalet and Yud, and also not having an extra cover for no reason. So the Sefer Ocharawa says he took it off at some point in his life. So it says the Mishna Berurah that you have to and one of them cannot be miyuchad for the mezuzah. If you have a glass cover on top of the mezuzah that you can see through it, even though that you can see the mezuzah, still considered one cover. So one of them cannot be see-through, but the other one could be see-through. There's no problem with that. Still considered a second cover. It's sufficient to put just a sudar, put some cloth on top of the mezuzah, and now it's considered not visible and two covers, and that is sufficient. Now, it's important to note that the Kaf HaChaim over here brings the Ben Ish Chai Paschal is like this, right? The Kaf HaChaim Paschal is like this. The Ben Ish Chai is mashma that disagrees with this. Ben Ish Chai seems to say that the mezuzah, if it's not see-through, if the cover is not see-through, then you don't need two covers, because anything that's above 10 tfachim is considered a different reshut, and therefore it doesn't need a double cover. So therefore, according to the Ben Ish Chai, so long as the outer cover is not see-through, you don't even need to have a second cover on top of it. But the Maaseh, of course, the Kaf HaChaim, others, they write that the Chatchila, a person should be machmir, like the Magen Abraham that we mentioned. But the Eved, of course, there is what to be mekel for those who can't do otherwise, and that's basically the Mishnah Berurah over here. It says the second one cannot be miyuchad for it. Lav davka v'hu adin ima primi enu miyuchad. Doesn't have to be the second one, the outer one that's not miyuchad. As we mentioned, you could line the inside of the mezuzah cover with a an opaque cover, paper or whatever. It's not see-through. So the first one is not see-through. The second one is first one is not miyuchad, and second one is miyuchad for mezuzah. That also is fine. But imechad eno miyuchad mistaref ima miyuchad v'shari, that becomes mutar as well. And Bezrat Hashem will continue Seif Gimel in the days to come.